waiting for that red ball, and then I'll intro.
There we go.
Welcome, everybody. This is the Fall Line with Chaos and Company, and Angelo and I are super psyched to start our new season. We're heading into September, and we got a hold of Ron Kipp, who is just, if you don't know Ron, I'm not sure you're in the ski or race world, ski instruction world and race world, because Ron is amazing in both our ski instruction world with PSIA Aussie. Have you on here, Ron. I got to work with you a little bit when you were really heavy when the Skills Quest first came out, and you were getting us all trained on how to score that. And that was super cool to go through that. I think you were out here for our ed staff training with the Alpine crew here in the East quite a few years ago. And then we did the New Hampshire Race Association clinic. You had all of them up there with Peter Holland going through that. So that was super fun. So we are super excited to have you on to talk to our listeners. And Angelo's here all decked out. He's got the Basie hat on. He's got his St. Vincent's sweatshirt. And he's got a new photo in the background. Angelo, do you want us to tell us about the new photo in the background?
That's my wife. That's Amanda.
Oh, yeah. Amanda's photo has made it in right underneath Wayne.
You know, like if I'm going to constantly do things to put myself in the doghouse, I should maybe take steps to try to get out of it occasionally. You know? And hey, the Basie hat, the British Association of Ski Instructors, I just want to give a congratulations to Pete Allison for becoming an American citizen. So I got this Basie hat from Pete over the winter, and as we were talking about it, I remembered that recently Pete became an American citizen. So let's welcome Pete to the United States.
Cool. Gee. and Ron, you've been skiing more recently than Angelo and I. I know you did some time, which you do every summer, out of Mount Hood. How did that go?
It was great. Mount Hood is actually my home. I don't knew that, but that's where I grew up, and so it's always special to go out there. And I don't think I've missed at least a week or two out there my entire life. So it's always great. So I was out
that's
there
cool.
With our FIS kids, our oldest kids, our best kids. And then I went back out for our U16s and U14s. So I got to see the whole gamut. It's great.
It's amazing to be out there. I get to go out there, and I was in Dave Gregory's peak performance camps in the early and mid 2000s. And it's amazing the talent, just the kids. I remember my first time out there and being in the public lane in the morning, warming up, and it's like a beehive. Yet when you finally figure out the flow, there's so much talent in the way everything's skiing. It's like it takes a run or two, but you get comfortable skiing in that group with the talent that's there.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun in the summer because it's kind of a who's who. Everybody in the world is out there. It's kind of fun because you get to see people, from the East Coast, Central, Rocky, the Northwest, obviously. It's fantastic. You get to keep our contact with a lot of old friends. It's good stuff.
Yeah. And so folks might not know who don't know. Tell us a little bit about your education development manager position at Team Palisades Tahoe, because that's where you're based out of now, right?
Yeah, it came up about, I think, my 7th year here now. Dee Byrne, who used to be a demo team member back when it was a demo team, is our COO here. And she was actually the head of snow sports in 2017. And she'd been telling me about a job she created because it's a pretty big team here. It's 1,800 athletes and 320 coaches. And so she thought, ski schools always have a training director. So why don't we make one for the ski team? Because one of our goals is to, be the number one producer of athletes to the U.S. ski team. So how do you do that? You have good coaches. So she came up with this job and said, I'm looking for a wrong kid. And I was like, God, I'm going to keep my eyes out. I'll know when I see that guy. And then finally it was like, I think it's time that I maybe apply for this job. And I got it, which was great. The economy of scale here is fantastic. You get anything you want. We got so many training spaces. Yeah. It's really something. And since we have a PSI connection, we have a huge one here. We have since we're under the same auspices of snow sports as ski school, we are able to have a congruent training opportunities with them. We utilize Dan Ray, was the training director for the ski school, and his staff to help coach our coaches. And we have this humongous symbiotic relationship. And in fact, we have a lot of level 1 and level 2 ski instructors on our race team staff. We push that very highly.
That's cool. And I don't think a lot of people know, man. The more I learn, it's like level 500. How do you get to level 500 coach, man? I knew there was a level 400, and I know level 300 is like, it's an immense task to get to level 300 in the coaching world. How do you get to level 500?
Or you have to live long enough, I think. So there actually is not a 400 or 500 anymore. It only goes to 300 because I don't know. But since I left the ski team in 2017, there's kind of been a lot of changeover in administration. And so the 400 and 500 are not there anymore, just 100, 200, 300, which are kind of equivalent to 1, 2, and 3 of PSIA. And then 400 and 500 were started quite a long time ago. And they're supposed to be like the master's and PhD level out there, or at least a graduate degree in ski coaching. So something higher. Now you can, I think the only way you can be at 500 is to be an ex-US ski team coach. But somehow it still comes up on my card. But yeah, just means you've been around for a long time.
Well, I don't know. If you had it at one time, I'd want to keep it. Wouldn't you want to keep it, Angelo? It's like, come on. Even though no one can get it now, I think it's even more valuable. It's like, I'm a 500. How do I get that? You can't.
Yeah. It's kind of like those old wood skis on the wall.
Yeah, that is super cool. And I know you're still involved with PSA. I don't know how much. I know you've been at the team tryouts, and we're going to talk about that a little later. But you're an examiner out west in one of the regions. I think it's the Western region.
We have an Alpine education team, which is our clinicians and education staff. And then we also have a small group, the Western National Development Team, the people that we are trying to group into making that same level, having the same racer skill level to national team level. And so we have a small group of coaches for that, and that small group in there. And we're trying to, it's kind of our 400 and 500 level, I guess, in a way, within our division, or our region. So, yeah.
Yeah. And you, it seems like, I mean, a few times I've had the chance to work with you past, and from the people I talk to that work with you in PSA and know you through the coaching world, their coaches, you do enjoy being in both worlds. I mean, it really is interesting because at times we'll have very much a separation here in the U.S. of our coaching world and our PSA, but there's definitely quite a few folks like yourself that definitely bridge that gap. And what do you love so much about being in both worlds?
I think it's essential. It's so funny that we are we're two different programs that don't cross enough. When I was with the ski team, the last time I was with the ski team was from 2010 to 2017. And we had 2 springs where we actually had U.S. ski team staff and some of the select athletes come to Snowbird. And we used Robin Barnes, Michael Rogan, a couple other of the coaches that came in and helped out. Members that came in and helped out. And we actually ran them through PSIA level 1, level 2, and level 3 over about a 2-week program. It was fantastic. We did a lot of other things in conjunction with that. But we actually took that staff and had them go through things. And some of the staff members who have been coaches for 5, 10, 15, 20 years or more said, this is one of the best educational things I've ever been to. And we're like, this is just normal stuff we do with our ski instructors. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things that I really, and it's one of the reasons I push PSI 1, 2, and 3, if we can get it, with my staff here, is that it just makes us better. We start to understand skiing. I always think of ski racing as first you got to understand skiing, then you can go on a ski racer. And a lot of times I think in this country, we just push ski racing and try to make kids ski racers as opposed to skiers first, then racers after that. So I think some of our best ski coaches, have had a ski instructor background. Huh. So I can't push it enough or speak highly enough of it. I mean, I kind of fell into both. When I started, when I ended my ski racing career with a bad accident. And so then went into ski teaching. I went through a clinic at Timberline Lodge on Mount Hood and took a job there. Didn't last too long because I went down to Ski Bowl, which is a place down in Government Camp because it offered, some other work opportunities. But from that, I just fell into the associate degree, which is level 2, now. And then a couple of years later, I took the level 3, and a couple of years after that became an examiner. So I've always thought, because I always thought, ski instructors are those guys running around with stretch pants. And, we kind of, made fun of them a little bit. It was like, gosh, now I'm one. But, I remember a friend saying, you can't criticize them until you are one. And all of a sudden I became an examiner also. And so it was like, okay, I seem to be learning a lot from here, a lot more than I am from the race side. The race side's a lot of, you see a lot of good coaches, and you can mimic a lot of good coaches and a lot of good mentors and things. But to really get down to the nuts and bolts, I think PSIA has the route to go.
Okay. And how did...
You can use that on the next commercial, please.
Yes, we will. And I want to know, because I don't know. I want to know when Ron Kipp learned how to ski, because I didn't even know. That's why I asked you and told you I wanted to talk about, have you raced in the past? But when was your first time on snow? Do you remember it? Was it with family, friends? Was it in an organized lesson? How did you start skiing?
Well, actually, I grew up in government camp. So we actually, basically skied to our house and stuff. So I was really, really young. I don't remember those actual times, but I do. This is really funny. I do remember my first parallel turn. That was back in the days when, the word fatal was floating around. So to keep your legs together, and your boots knocking back and forth, although they were leather, so they make that cool sound. But that was kind of the goal. And I remember, I've thought of this several times. So I think I was probably about 6 or 7 years old. And I was skiing down, and if anybody on here is from Mount Hood or remember Multipore, I was skiing down the road towards the parking lot. And somehow I linked some parallel turns. And it was like, oh my gosh. And I would have hopped back on that rope tow, but it was the end of the day. The rope tow was shut off. And I was like, wow. And I don't remember what I did on the next day or anything after that, but I do remember those very first parallel turns, probably when I was about 6 or 7. And after that, it's a pretty big blank. But it's one of those things that, it really was. It was a big deal. The whole Zeta thing, the stick, putting your legs together, was a big deal. Even down to when I'm going to tell you this thing. The first exercise I ever learned was you take off the glove or gloves and you put them between your knees.
Yeah.
And then you go ski. That will keep your legs. Okay. That's really important.
We're going to have to do that at Pro Jam, which I've got to get the new lingo, Angelo. What do we call Eastern Academy, I think, this year for Pro Jam. But we'll try that. We're going to have to get out. In honor of Ron Kipp, we're going to go, hey, we're going to see if we can ski with our glove put right between our knees and see if we can hold them there. And see what Michael Rogan says to us when he's watching my group go by.
Yeah.
Well, now government camp is cool. If people haven't been out to Mount Hood in the summer and seen, government camp's pretty cool. You go down there and all the ski companies have their little spots where you can get skis if you're in the camps to try out and that. The kids are on the skateboards. There's a skateboard park there. Super cool little place. How was it just the same when you were a kid? How has government camp evolved?
No, it was a sleepy little mountain town. There was nothing like it is today. We skied up on the Palmer Glacier, but it was a portable service lift they hauled up there, and like a disc lift, and you put the thing between your legs and hauled you up a little bit. We skied not just bamboo, but sometimes what was called slide alder. We'd cut it down in the forest down at government camp. Super. Yeah, it's fun to go out there. I miss going out there in July for a week, and because Hood River is only like an hour away. We used to ride down there one night and have dinner, and it's pretty cool on the river there. They got sailboats in one section, the kite boarding, then they got the windsurfing. It was pretty amazing down there. Yeah, great place. It's always been a great place, and it's still home to me. So it's so fun to go back.
That's cool. And how did you was just skiing growing up right there in Mount Hood? So you went into racing. And tell us a little about your racing in school and then before it ended.
Before it ended. Well, I raced to a fairly high standard to what was called the NORAMs back then, and was not overly competitive, but I was still being an athlete in a few other sports, which probably wasn't the best idea at that older age. And I had a bad accident and fell into ski coaching basically because that was the best option for me.
Yeah. And so did you, when you were going to school, college and on, because you have your PhD. And I love chatting. If folks haven't chatted with you or chatted with folks that have their PhD in kinesiology and motor learning like you do, it's amazing. I love picking your brain, and I have someone at Plymouth State that in the same kind of role with a PhD in motor learning. It's amazing to talk about coaching when somebody has that kind of knowledge. And I want to know, did you go to school figuring you wanted to do that to put into coaching and ski teaching, or was it just something you wanted to go into? How did that all happen?
A little bit by accident, but I actually had a double major. I was a geography major and a PE major. So, because I love sport and I was involved in a lot of sports growing up. So it was one of those things that I always started to see things come back. And pretty soon it was like, I'm starting to see these things that I'm learning as in my PE degree that apply to ski coaching and ski teaching. And so, then eventually went to graduate school after that, with a lot more of a real emphasis. But having that PE degree is useful as much, if not more, than my sports science degree sometimes. It's we're PE teachers out there sometimes. So.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I wanted to get into a little bit. It's like a lot of us can know skiing. You talked about you wanted your athletes to know skiing, but then it's another thing to go out and do it. And I know in some of your writings and conversations you've talked about that people can know how to do this, but you got to get out and do it to really get good at it. And that's what I want to know. Was like, from Ron Kipp, the master, what are the tricks of really coaching instead of teaching? And we talk a lot in our world of like, am I teaching or am I coaching? Because if I teach, I'm just kind of lecturing to them, but how do I coach them to get better? What would you say just for any kind of skiing? Like even when people are starting, what are some of the tricks to help us get people to ski faster, not faster on the hill, but learn how to ski faster, get on more terrain? Are there tricks in the motor learning world that we could learn about?
Yeah, the biggest trick is you have to do it. The number one feature of getting better at any sort of athletic endeavor is by doing it. And I think we have a lot. I mean, this is where sometimes the jokes are around, that we stand around too much as ski instructors. And I think it's one of those things, and this is a real conundrum for me, is because you hear people go, you'll have the theoretical part, that we try to get across, which is really important. We have basic and applied science of the basic and applied things we do in ski teaching pedagogy. And people think that everything that I teach them in the classroom, they have to go do on the hill. And really what it's supposed to do is influence what they do on the hill. And so sometimes you have coaches go, I don't want my coaches going to those clinics and things, because all they're going to do out there is get out there and talk, which is somewhere we dropped the ball and we forgot to tell people that just move your athletes. And I think one of the things that I've heard, like in Europe, you get off the World Cup and they won't let you be a ski coach until you've gone through ski coach school, which, in Austria takes a better part of a year. And, here it's pretty much we let people right out of the cage and get right after it. But in Europe, it's more like, this is what I've heard anyway, is that you pretty much, I want you just to go out there, do not say anything, just ski the kids, just have the kids follow you. And that does a couple things. For one, they're seeing a really good image. And for another, they're just skiing a lot, and probably a lot of stuff that coach wants to go ski on. We don't want to get our kids into over terrain, which, is easy to do at a place like Palisades here. But we want them to, definitely get lots of mileage and have a good model to follow. So after that, knowing all that other stuff that we learn in the theoretical part, should apply. When I go to do movement analysis, I met this academic side. I have constructs that I always think define concepts that allow you to categorize things, and therefore you see more significant in the actions and with the lack of actions in a skier.
Yeah. And Angelo and I have a lot of conversations on this kind of stuff off the air, don't we, Angelo? We're not doing podcasts and stuff because, Angelo's not the only one. I've talked to folks that, have their education background and taught like Angelo taught for 20 years in the public school system here in the U.S. And I always go, oh man, it must be great bringing some of your education background to ski teaching. They're like, I bring more of the ski teaching knowledge I learned back to the classroom. And Angelo's shaking his head. Mm-hmm. Right, eh?
I said that a lot, yeah. I think people assume that I like you said, that being a school teacher informs being a ski teacher. And it does to a degree. I mean, because you do understand things like pedagogy and structuring a lesson plan and building a learning environment. You definitely, you have experience with those things, but, ski teaching really informed me in my science classroom to like move the kids. And what that means is like, I taught biology, it's way better to teach biology outside on a trail with living organisms, plants and seasonal changes and succession than it is to sit there and read about it in a book. So I think, like, looking back, I was probably more willing to do those kinds of things with my classes because of my skiing background than maybe my colleagues were comfortable doing. Like, I was more comfortable just like throwing caution to the wind and taking the kids outside and actually showing them something, get their hands dirty and stuff like that, because you do it on the ski, or you should do it on the ski, and that's, to Ron's point, that's how you learn. You got to do it.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah. And I remember from a couple of days working with you, Ron, that we did a day at Sunday River. I think it was a day or two at Sunday River that you went through with coaches, getting us to be able to score the skills quest. And it was really neat, though, that piece and the piece we did at Bretton Woods for a couple of days with the coaches there. You were setting up some of the skills quest activities. And without telling anybody, not even those of us who were leading groups, you were changing up the little courses you were setting in the different tasks, different distances, because, in Skills Quest, everything's mapped out for when we score it, but you were changing the variables. And I do remember asking you, like, oh yeah, when you're training, this is how you should train your athletes, and you get to change the variables. Don't let it just stay the same. And how does that work into us getting them out there skiing better and changing the variables? Because that was pretty important to you, I remember.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. And I think it's coming around more. I have a group in Norway that I used to work with and still work with. And one of the things that we have been trying to do is we've always, not always, but for a long time in motor learning and motor control, we've understood the importance of variability. And I'm talking like 60, 70, 80. And you could even go back 100 years with Bernstein and stuff, how variability is important. The whole dynamic thought on motor learning is part of that. It deals with variability, whether it's environment or within the performer. So changing things up. And one of the things that I always think of is it's a game I used to play in the classroom, and actually did one of our Dan and Ron videos which was on variability. And I'm asking Allison Mullen, who is now on the US ski team, a series of math questions. And basically, you ask her the same question like 6 times in a row. What's 6 plus 3 minus 2? What's 6 plus 3 minus 2? And so she whips off the answer. 6 plus 3 is 9 minus 2 is 7. So she'd go 7, 7, 7, 7, 7. Then I'd ask questions similar to that, but change the numbers. So she actually had to, run math stuff through her head. And it's the exact same thing when it's with your body. When it's the same turn over and over, you're basically just running off the same motor program. But if all of a sudden it's a big turn into a little turn, or that half in, half out on the groomed and ungroomed, something like that, now you have some change, and I have to find a new motor program or a new solution in which to actually pull off the goal of making a turn. So that variability is the way we learn, whether it's academic or whether it's a motor sport.
Cool. And talking about these ideas and sharing them, for someone like you, it must be super fun going to Interski. I know you're at the last Interski in Levi, Finland, 2024. How was that experience? And for you, when you go to the Interski, how many Interskis have you been to? I know it's more than one.
4. The last 4.
So when Ron Kipp goes to Interski, like, what are you going to look for? Like, are you going to certain countries? Or there's got to be some folks there that from the other countries in the scientific world, but like, what are you jumping on going, I got to go see what these guys are doing, or this crew over here? What excites you going to Interski, and what did about the last one?
Well, the big thing, and actually when I first got real serious about ski teaching, it was back in 1975. And the skills concept had just been presented at Interski and Severoplesky, Czechoslovakia, not the Czech Republic anymore. And Renee Farwig, who was the head coach, was our ski school director. Steve Brock would be director right after him. Was on the staff. He was one of the members of that team. So I was immersed in this whole skills concept all the way back to when it first came out. So the whole interski thing I have always followed. And so, it's gone from the demo ski performances to ski presentations, i.e. pedagogy, people skills, that sort of thing. So at the last one, I was pretty proud wearing around in a USA costume in that this is where we are. We are one of the leaders in this part. Ski performances, you still got the Swiss and you got the Austrians, which are basically, ex-World Cuppers and ex-World Europa Cuppers. They do ski the best. And I'll tell you what, they're not too bad at the ski presentation stuff either. So they're always great, at demos and their presentations. But this one you'll probably laugh at. You'll probably have to edit out. But the one I have a clinic crush on is the Hungarians. And that's because they are academic based and they're not afraid to deviate from these contemporary cliches. Their clinics, indoors and out, are based on real life situations and problems. They seem to approach everything with simple and scientific or science backed explanations. So I have a couple of friends on that team, from the academic world, and we still communicate a lot. And they are very, not just physiologically or anatomy based, but very neurophysiologically based. So not how things just move, but what actually moves them. And they've always impressed me. Basically, because they know they're not Austria, they know they're not Switzerland, and they can, push the envelope a little bit. It's okay to be a little edgy because, only 30 people are going to show up at their clinic anyway. So they are right. I always call my clinic crush. I can't wait to see those guys, in person and actually ski with them and see what they have put together. They've never ceased to amaze me.
And you've gone, I think I've seen on your Facebook page, you still go over to Europe. There's a couple times a year, there's some science. The crew gets together. I mean, all the PhD crew and certain things that's in the ski world.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what goes on there?
Well, I'm involved in a couple of different programs. So ICSS, International Congress of Skiing and Science, International Society for Skiing Safety, ISSS. I've even been the chairman of that. We brought it back to the USA for the first time in 25 years. A couple of years ago, we had it here at Palisades, ICSS, and also the Balkan SPE, Science, Practice, and Education, which is really a great one because it really makes the link between just science and the ski instructors. So you get a lot of ski instructors, trainers that also come to that, not just the ski scientists. So those are the three big ones that I go back and forth for. And we'll be going back for ICSS again this year in Val de Femme, and then over to Selbach for the World Championships. So I'll be in Europe for another month.
Tons going on in the high level world. It's pretty cool. And you've been involved a lot with PSA for the national team tryouts. I know you've been a scorer multiple times. You were there when I was a candidate in 212. And I was like, oh, God, make sure you listen to the question when Ron asks you a question, because I know it's going to be, every word's going to be something. But I mean, you've been there a lot. You're one of the people that helps decide what gets on our national team for PSA in the Alpine world. And it's a pretty amazing team every time it comes around. I mean, what has that experience been like? And I know you have to enjoy that, but that is a tough job to do, to pick and go through that group to find out who's going to be on that team.
Yeah, for one thing, it's a real honor, and just hanging around the other evaluators is always an honor. I think I have roomed with everybody. Just put it that way. Yeah, and it's extremely important to our organization. They're really the face of PSIA or AASI. They are the best of the best. You get there and it's like, oh, wow. I hope I would have waxed, and I hope I can, just even keep up to get down to the spot we're going to be. They're really, really good skiers. I wish we could have like a 60-member team, because everybody that there is actually really great. It's the who's who out of each region. So,
and I know I know when I went to 212, it's pretty cool to watch everybody, even when you're a candidate in that process and you're going through trying to, watching some of the presentations indoors and watching some of the teaching on hill and the skiing. I still have visions of certain people skiing going, wow, that was amazing right there, a certain run. And then there's also, some teaching segments. I'm like, wow, that person really nailed it. That's why they're on the team right now. I saw that piece. And is there some things, and you don't have to mention the last tryout if you don't want, because it's so new, but like, is there a couple ski runs or presentations over the years you've been a scorer at the tryout that like stand out that you're like, wow, this person really put on a presentation that was amazing, or a ski run?
Yeah, there's a few that really hopped out at me. And one I think it was time before last, and it's when the twins, Bart and George Flynn, first tried out, and they were young, and oh my gosh, just to watch them ski was fabulous. It was as good as watching a World Cup skier, out there. It really was inspiring. And then I got thinking, yeah, they got the stuff, but can they really inspire me with some teaching? And I remember, it got towards the end. Obviously, they made the team, and I can't remember if it was George or Bart because I do get them mixed up. And I was in one of the teaching groups, and now we're scoring the teaching part, and I was just dazzled with the simplicity and the basics that came out. I'm like, I would pay money to go ski with this guy. And I get to ski with a lot of great skiers. But it was like, I would pay to go ski with this guy tomorrow. He not inspired me with his skiing, but his coaching, his eye, the way he presented stuff, the way he talked to me and the I guess he wasn't talking to me so much, but talk to the other candidates that were the students in the group was just phenomenal. And you can see why people, knocking the doors down to go to interski is that because they get to ski with these guys like George and Bart. And it's like, it was just amazing. I'm just like, out of 1 to 10, I was putting 11s all over the place. So it was great.
It's pretty cool. When they've come to every year they've come since they made the team to the Masters Academy at Killington with PSIA, and they get on the hill, and it's Bart and George coming down the hill. When you see them, who it is coming down the hill. Pretty amazing. And Angelo, you were one of those people out there looking at a lot of the scoring this spring minute. What stood out to you, man?
Well, you can see other groups when you're in a group. So you can see a lot of great skiing and riding, like from the chair, from your group as others move past and whatnot. And then you get to hear some stuff close up. And I will mention somebody who is on the team now, not his first term, but just really, really blew my doors off with his teaching segment. That was Chris Rogers. The first day on Monday, I was with the snowboard long teaches, and Chris just hit it out of the park. And you could just tell that he was totally in his wheelhouse with how he managed himself, how he communicated with the groups, with the group, with the demos he gave. It was just coming from another place. And it was like no shock that he wasn't incumbent, and no shock that he made it again this time. That was one that really jumped out. And then I remember coming up the lift. Ron, what day was it? Was it Thursday when Alpine went on Turkey Traverse? It was really gnarly and frozen. Was that Thursday? Wednesday?
Oh, I can't remember the day, but I do remember the day.
I do remember the condition. Yeah, and and then there's that picture. There's that montage of Zoe blowing up. It was just an amazing photo montage. I don't know if you guys saw that, but it was that day, and it was super gnarly. And you look up there and you see Gumby coming down the hill, only completely coordinated and beautiful. And it was one of the twins. I was too far away to tell which one it was, but I heard all day about these conditions, and I'm getting texts all day about the conditions because it was just gnarly. And then you look up and it's like, oh, well, yeah, no wonder it's not bothering him. He's just floating 3 inches above it the whole run. I don't think he touched the ground, but I mean, and you see other stuff like Chris Caruso. It's just fantastic to watch. It's just, and to Ron's point, it's a shame that you can't take everybody because there are so many people who are so good. It's just a treat to watch it. And I'm stealing stuff that I saw there. There's no question I'm going to steal some of the teaching strategies I saw. It was terrific.
Wow. And Ron, you've done a lot of traveling, and I know if people don't know you, you actually coached the Norwegian team for a while. You were coaching the Norwegian team. How much are you still connected with some of that World Cup level? I know you must be with some. Are you still connected with the U.S. team, and how much you must get to see a lot of the World Cup type skiers in person? Because I know sometimes there's some athletes, the U.S. team, there's a few other athletes sometimes from other countries come to Hood, and then sometimes you go down south, I think, once in a while. How much do you see that talent in person now?
Well, actually, compared to the average ski instructor, quite a bit.
Yeah.
But not as much as I used to. Yeah, I still have big connections in Norway. The sports science director of the Norwegian ski team is actually an ex-student of mine. So we have, we're talking every month about stuff and things, and involved still with a lot of research out there and stuff. Got big connections in Salzburg at the university there, which, used to run the Christian Doppler Institute, which is all the sports science for the Austrian ski team. And going out there before ICSS. So that, good connections. And it's good to keep your feet wet, so you know what's going on in the other countries. Plus it hanging around other academic minds, that are only think about skiing. There's a lot of good stuff comes up when you're having a beer. That's for sure.
Yeah, we talk about it. Most of our good learning happens, after the day when we're sitting in the bar talking about something that day, or the next morning, like, hey, I was trying to do this with my group and I couldn't get them to do anything. Someone will give you a suggestion, like, damn, that worked. Yeah. It's amazing how that stuff happens off the hill when we spend so much time on it. But I asked that because I want to know what Ron Kipp looks at as like, that's good skiing. When you see something, you talk about Bart and George, we watch them ski and it's like, man, it's amazing what they can do on a pair of skis. But can you describe a little bit what Ron Kipp's view of good skiing is? And is it only, because you do a lot of the race world, so I know it probably lies there a lot on the hard snow, but how does it transfer into, off-peak?
It's funny, I just actually came from a meeting with our head free ride coaches. And one of the things is, how do they have their 5 judging criteria for that, the big mountain stuff. And to me, it's a little superfluous, but it's, we're trying to come up with almost a thing like we did with the Far West Development Initiative with the 9 concepts, try to come up with concepts that we can hang our hat on and lead those coaches down their road. But and it's tough. Ski racing is actually really easy because you have a clock on it. So you always know who the best is and there's no arguing, right? You only win by 100th of a second, but you can say this guy beat that guy. And in these other sports, which is a lot like ski teaching, when we go out and do exams, there's a lot of subjective stuff, but we try to give some sort of, we call it objective criteria, we give it a number, but what is it really, really, really? So the more you can identify that concept, the better off you'll be. And the one thing that keeps coming to me is something I've thought of just with a few other things. Good skiing is the skier that is in command of their skis. It's whether it's kind of like that fine line at ski racing between control and not. So can I push it to some sort of limit and even overstep that boundary, but I still have command of the skis? You can think about it. We watch a lot of stuff in slow-mo. You'll see somebody coming around a turn at 70 miles an hour, and the outside ski is going doing, 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 and they're actually on the inside ski. But we say, they're outside ski dominant. They're trying to keep that outside ski, engaged with the ground and trying to then make it, carved as well as possible. But it might be in the air 75% of the time, but they're still in command of it. It's one of these things that we have in our body system. And one of the things I always think of is that instead of having 3 phases of the turn, we need 100 phases of the turn, so I can come back to whichever phase I need to be in. So my body will come back to that tonic spot in my body posture. So I'm trying to be outside ski dominant, even though it's bouncing around out there. So to have command of the ski is a big deal, even though something else might be going on in other parts of the kinematic chain. So that's kind of where I'm stuck at. What is good skiing? Obviously ski racing is easy because it's a clock, but for instructors, we have exams, we have ways we're supposed to do stuff, and Big Mountain is trying to come up with a way to kind of categorize that also. And when you jump off a cliff and, you're in the back seat, doing the backstroke, then, something is, you don't really have command. Although if you set it down, say it's a light landing, you kind of absorb it, staying over the middle of the ski or the middle of the foot and able to arc out of that thing, you got command. That's good stuff.
Yeah. So video is used so much today, and there's so much to watch, and there's so much more, I think, now than when I was a kid to be able to see our World Cup athletes skiing, men and women. Are there certain athletes you like your kids that are training with you to watch, and some of the athletes you don't want them to watch, and why?
That's a really good thing, Dave, because one of the things that just to roll backwards a little bit, we've got these little teeny cameras, and we use our iPhones and stuff like that, and we'll even airdrop a series of turns on the chairlift to the athletes so they can see themselves. But one of the and that's really cool stuff. But one of the problems is that they will go, oh yeah, I'm rotating at the end of the turn again. I'm rotating at the end of the turn. I'm rotating at the end of the turn. And they take on that identity and they just keep doing it. Although if I give them a picture of Marco Odermatt and I go, watch the last part of his turn, how he's staying open to the hill and the hip is going in and he's trying to be outside ski dominant and those kind of things. Look for that. Now I think we get somewhere. We can take video and actually use it to a real positive level, where if you keep looking at our same errors, you start to become that error. So I'm not a big proponent of overwatching video. You can say, here we saw it again, or I see this again. This is what I want. This is what I want to see. And I'm now going to give you 5 clips of Marco Odermatt.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
And that kind of leans into your YouTube, because I wanted to ask you, you have a great YouTube channel, the Ron and Dan Show, or the Dan and Ron Show, I think it is, which I watch everyone. We are subscribed as a KS and company, and really some great stuff. And 2 of the ones that I love, and one a ton of us love. I know my buddy Chris Erickson here in the East, one of our ad staff members, loves the hands up. That's one of our favorites. And then also the one on learning. And you go through, how learning occurs, and you have the little egg demo and the ice. Yep. And how that goes in. And it's really neat how you describe, because I've talked to some other motor learning specialists, and it's like, just because you don't think learning is happening, you don't see it. Learning can be occurring. And that's what you talk about in that video, that it's so cool to me that you really can't tell if learning is occurring. And I just wanted you to, if you could chat just quickly about that. I thought it's so cool in that video.
Yeah, it's always the difference. And this kind of evolves. I mean, performance and learning are a big deal in motor learning and motor control. But you hear it when you go into the locker room and you say, my student, he finally got it. Like it's this switch, I worked my magic and my student has got it, But how do you really know if they've truly learned? I mean, one way is you can go out and go, do they know it the next day? And can they do it in different conditions and stuff like that? But yeah, the egg analogy, for people that haven't heard it, it's real simple. You can go to the Dan and Ron Show and watch it. But the difference between performance and learning is you take a bottle of water, you put it in the freezer, and you take it out and you let it sit. It melts. It goes back to water. Learned something here, didn't you? So we know that you can take boiling water, put an egg in it for 12 minutes. I had to look that up, and take it out of the water, let it cool, and it looks the same. But if you crack it and open it, you notice it has changed. It's now, a hard-boiled egg. So freezing water is like performance, but the boiling water, or the action that took place in the boiling water, is the egg change, because the heat caused proteins in the insides and the egg white and yolk to denature and to coagulate. The proteins in the eggs have undergone a physical change in structure. So that is akin to learning. We want a physical change in something happening. Everybody's sort of like myelin moving, the saltatory conduction down the myelin sheath of a neuron, that buildup of myelin. Something physical has to change. You can't see that. You can't go, hey, by the way, I'd like to cut open your brain and check out some myelin here, see if you really learned that. We can check the egg, but you can't check, the myelin or that roadway, on a neuron. But you can assume they've learned if they can come back and keep doing it day after day after day, or like riding a bike. You get the grandma who goes out and rides a bike. She hadn't ridden it since she was a 14-year-old girl or something like that. She kind of learned how to do it, even though it might be wobbly, because of her age or something. But she probably really learned how to ride that bike. So yeah, performance learning, very, very big deal. It's one of the things in motor learning I would like to be able to show through variability of practice how we can actually make that work better. But skiing is a really multi-dimensional, multifaceted sport to do at simple research in. So
yeah, and that's where I want to go into like our PSIA members and how they are training. And I'll put it right out there, and Angelo will probably get nailed. People are like, "What do you mean you got?" They want instant fix. Like they come out in a 2-day event with me, and they want to get their level 2 the next week. And a lot, more than 90% of the time, those 2 days will help them if they go home and practice and continue to develop. But those 2 days alone, I might be good, but I'm not that good. I'll admit it. You can't come just 2 days and then, hey, I guarantee you're going to be able to pass your level 2 next week. There's a level of process in there in motor learning and skiing that they need to put more time in on the hill, as you've talked about, variable practice and experimenting. And that's kind of my question. Like, what is some of the things you'd like to see? Because you're an examiner like we are. What are some of the things you'd like to see them do more of, or how they would like to set up their training as a ski pro to get to their level 2, level 3? What should they be thinking about and doing? Should it be different snow surfaces? Should it be more focused on drills on the low end than taking it up the hill, or just going and skiing the bumps?
Yeah, one thing they need to find you, Dave, so they can go out, because that gives them the groundwork. So, I think it's one of those things that we need to remember, that we don't just teach skiing, but we teach skiers. So everyone has things that they can do and things that they can't do. But as teachers of teachers, we need to find out what our students cannot do. So we get them in a situation, because it's easy to see what they can do, and we can reinforce that. So which kind of takes me back to, what's the most important thing in motor learning? That's practice. Then the second most important thing is feedback. And that feedback has to be understood. So when I'm working with the most elite skiers, I try to find something they can't do. And at times I'll find a drill or something we just happen to fall into. And if they can't do it, I immediately gravitate towards it. I don't even have to understand or realize what is being highlighted, but I know that it's a weakness. And if it's a weakness, it needs to be resolved. So you don't get to the World Cup by being a one-trick pony. You need to have a lot of tools in the toolbox. I might not even know what this one tool is doing, but if I can find out an athlete can't do it, then I'm doing that thing and beating it into the ground. So, yeah.
And I remember a Ron Kipp saying that I learned, I think it was at the NAR clinic, because you were talking to some of the ski coaches, the race coaches that were doing some of those skills quest activities. And you said to them, when one of your athletes, when you find out something they can't do, you tell that athlete they've just found gold.
Totally.
Because that's the ticket right there. And you said that to them. You said, they've just found gold. Go work on that. And,
and the more elite they are, the harder that is to find. Yeah. And when you find it, but it's also one of those things that a lot of times, we do something that we don't have any ownership of it yet. So the egg has only been in the water for a couple minutes. It hasn't been in there 12 minutes yet. So we need to fully cook that egg. Not that we have the 10,000 hours or anything like that, but we do know it takes a long time to get good. So.
Yeah. And practice sessions. We all have to admit it. I go to the home hill when I've been on the road for a week, and Saturday morning I want to go up and ski the trail I love, and I ski the same side, and I ski the same size of turn on that trail. I have to force myself to do some mix up. How important, which I know you're going to say it's very important, but how important, and how can you stress with all of our athletes and our ski pros to improve their athletic ability on skis, it is to be okay with failing, with not doing it right every time, and changing things up, to change turn sizes, to change speed. They want to do it so well every turn, where I know, working with you and some other specialists in motor learning, it's like, it's okay to experiment, and it doesn't have to be right.
Yeah. And actually, it's one of those things that we always think you've got to be doing it perfect. And really, one of the most common thoughts now is we don't And the feedback we get, we're not a reactionary animal. We don't do things by reaction. We always think, oh, I'll increase my reaction time and things like that. We are more of a predicting animal. So we learn to stay on our outside foot, not by losing the pressure, but having lost pressure on the outside ski before and figuring out how to get it back on the ground. So we deal in predictions rather than reactions out there. So we want to have many, many instances that we actually fail at so that we can figure out a solution to it. If I was kind of back to the math and say I'm that third grader and I've learned my addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and I find out that I can do everything really good except I can't divide. So I don't really need to go work on those other things. I know how to do those. But the more I failed at that division, I can figure out what part of it is I don't know. So now I can predict what I'm going to do on the next go around, the next test sort of thing. So when people go, oh, I can't ski soft snow because I've never skied soft snow. Well, that's okay. But you do know how to ski hard snow. You do know how to predict how it is to be on one ski or both skis or stand in the middle of the ski. Now we'll take that prediction and take it into that soft snow. So we are not going to get better by doing the things that we can do. Kind of back to that earlier analogy. We're only going to get better by doing the things we did not know how to do, because now we're going to have prediction results, which we can press that button when the problem comes
and
around.
Angelo talks about a lot, because I always bring it up because he's a big skateboarder, has been for years and decades, and his body at times, he tells me, feels it from those decades. But that's a group, on the skateboards, and they experiment. There are always new tricks and new variations of it, and never afraid of failing, which, man, I can see that pavement and that cement, and it hurts, Angelo.
It teaches you lessons, that's for sure. And if you're predicting pain, you try to change your movement pattern. If you're predicting the next outcome and you associate it with pain, it's like, I don't want to have that again. So I need to make some sort of an adjustment. And I think, to Ron's point, it's not about practicing to perfection. It's more about purposeful practice. It's like, well, that didn't work, so I'm going to intentionally try this change and see if that works, if I get the outcome I want this time. And you take perfection out of the equation, I think things get a lot more real, get a lot more attainable. But you replace that with purposefulness instead of perfection, and you can probably make progress pretty quickly that way.
Yeah. And Ron, you said a lot about that, 325 coaches for your 1,800 athletes. That's huge. And you had a lot of level 1s and 2s of PSIA coaching with you. What are some of the coaching things you give them? I mean, that's one of the things I always try to remember as I'm teaching the teachers. As you say, we're the ones that are teaching the teachers, and that I have to remember back that, like, I can't expect them to do what I can do now. What are some of the things you're giving them, or working with your trainers that are given those level 1s and 2s to continue to improve, but to do a good job teaching wise? Are there some things that you think about for the level 1s and level 2s that might be a little simpler than the level 3 folks you get out there coaching?
Yeah, you kind of think of it as, in athletes, we think of long-term athlete development. We can think of the same thing. We could have long-term coaches development. So things, to start are really simple. You learn a few drills, you do these drills and so on. Then I think by level 2 or so, you start to learn some stuff about movement analysis, and you learn that the drill can do more things. So one of the analogies I like to give is that first, we're not just instructors, but we're facilitators of learning. It has to be about their goals. They have to have a goal. They have to have buy-in. They have to have ownership. So we want to not just do a drill, but what the drill will do for each student. So imagine you have a group, and one of the things I always say as Angelo and you and I do is that, you have a 5-person group lesson. It's really not a 5-person group lesson. It's a 5-person private lesson. So every person is the most important person out there. And so the analogy that I've kind of come up with is imagine you say, I've got these guys and they're all doing something different. We're going to do javelin turns on the way you cross one ski over the other ski. And one guy has trouble just directing pressure to the outside ski. So you decide to direct his emphasis or attention to balancing on that outside ski. He's doing the javelin. He's going to balance against that outside ski. Another student is rotating his upper body. So we have him concentrating on countering on his pelvis, at his pelvis. So the leg that we're standing on, that pelvis is now pivoting over the pelvis. It's not so much about the ski going down the hill. That's just a mnemonic to get that pelvis to rotate on top of the femur. Then you could have another student who's having trouble moving forward in the turn. He gets done, he makes a turn, he just staying on his heel. So we have them to drop their tip at the start of the turn or even at the traverse there, so that somehow they have to move forward, but they realize that they're moving forward and they can latch onto that. Then you got to force students in the backseat. So just the opposite. And somehow he has to figure out how to balance to keep him in the middle of the ski or the middle of the foot. So his concentration is on staying between the bindings. And the fifth guy's just a leaner, can't make any angles. So we point out that same as the one that's rotating his pelvis. Now we're angulating that pelvis, or using the angle between the pelvis and the femur as the skis are crossed. So the same drill, 5 different problems, but we would still use just the javelin turn. We didn't go out and just do the javelin. We went out and gave each person individual feedback. Now, if I'm just that level 1 instructor going out with that group and just doing a javelin turn, isn't going to be bad. It's going to be some pretty good stuff, because I just learned it this morning and all I know about it is somehow that ski points down the hill. And even if they do it wrong, meaning that they're pointed, they bend at the knee and they point the ski down the hill, pelvis hasn't moved much, it's going to move a little bit and I've got a little bit out of it. But now as a level 2 or a level 3 instructor, I can direct individual pieces of that javelin turn to each individual athlete. I'm not just teaching skiing, but I'm teaching skiers. So,
yeah. And feedback, I know, is pretty important, and a lot of your writings have said that it being positive, and you spoke about it already in some of the feedback you spoke about here when we talked about the video. And you were like, you'd rather show Audemars doing it right than showing them the video, so they don't get in their mindset, I'm doing this, I'm rotating. How important is it how we freeze that feedback?
Oh, well, just like I said, it's got to be in the positive. And if I say something to somebody, it's that primacy recency thing. They remember the first thing, the primacy, and they remember the most recent thing I said. So what I want to do is, if I say don't sit back, that's like don't think of a white elephant. You'll think of a white elephant. If I say don't sit back, the don't goes away and they end up sitting back. And I've one of the things I've always given myself is if I get a little too talky out there, because I can do that myself, is always end with just tell them what I don't want to do. It's like, oh my gosh, I just whipped off 5, technical statements in a row, and I want to say move forward at the end of the turn, move forward or after the end of the turn. I want you to start the turn by moving forward. It's just like, okay, let's get back. You got to go skiing. Kind of shut myself up and get them moving, but give them that one piece of what to do.
What to do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I know you and I and Angelo, we always make at least one mistake a year. So just the way we can get out of it.
Well, it's definitely that. It's amazing how many times you catch yourself, and you've got to be pretty self-aware as a coach, because you fall into it. I mean, you do, because you see something, it's in your brain, but you got to put it into that mode of how am I going to transmit that information to the athlete or the student, whichever mode you're in.
Yeah,
and we do.
Yeah, like Angelo said, knowing the pedagogy stuff, it's not like you're sometimes doing it, but sometimes it keeps you online. It's like, oh, I just kind of overstepped the boundary. I just did something maybe I should have done a little differently. Mm-hmm. But you can get yourself right back on track. Yeah. You didn't score a 10 that day, but you got a good solid 9.5. So.
Yeah.
Well, and
Angelo loves to experiment. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I want to vouch for Ron, not that he needs it, but I think it's pretty clear that from the conversation, he's a terrific teacher. And Ron, I don't even know if you remember this, but I've had the pleasure of hanging out with Ron a handful of times. And last year at Western Ed Staff training, we were in a group together at Mammoth. And Dave, you mentioned earlier about how much we learn when we're off the snow. And Ron, you're talking about like individualizing instruction and bringing it to the student because they have their goals and aspirations and so on. And I had an experience on the surface. It was nothing, but this conversation made me think of it. But we went in for lunch, Ron, one day last year at Mammoth, and I don't remember why we were talking about, there was a table full of us, and I don't remember why we were talking about symmetry and pain, but that's where the conversation went. And you looked at me and you said, do you feel like you're symmetrical? And I was like, yeah, I do. And your next question was, point to your painful spots on your body. And I pointed to my painful spots, and they're all on the same side because I skateboard regular footed. So I always fall on my left side. So I've got whiplash on the right and all the, and so I walk through all these painful spots on my body. They're all on the same side. And then he looks at me and says, so are you symmetrical? I was like, no. But the point is, you led me to that. Like, you didn't tell me that. You led me to that. And it was a realization. And then I knew I had to stretch differently, condition differently, and so on and so forth. So there are all these little bits and pieces of this conversation so far today about, how much you learn off the snow and individualizing instruction. That little anecdote seemed relevant, but it just to make the point that, he made that about me. At that point, I was the student. And Ron, you made that about my experience. And I had a takeaway that I remember a year later. And that's just really a testament to how good of a teacher Ron is. Like, your reputation obviously is focused around the technical and the race world, but what a terrific teacher. And I remember a conversation on the hill. We were running through our teaching scenarios and examiner training and whatnot. But your input was about questioning and how you get information from the student so you can supply the input they need to meet their goals. And so just a couple things I remember from last year that he puts his money where his mouth is and actually like teaches people where they are. It's a gift. It's well done. So thank you for that example.
Thanks, Angelo. But I don't think it's a gift. I think it's something that, and you know this as well as anybody, that we work really hard to become better than we were yesterday, sort of thing. Yeah. But thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. And in that, I know you can just tell that you're always thinking, you're always looking down the road, you're connected. People go, why do you ask him who he's connected with across the world? Because I know you're searching and you, like you said, how do we get people skiing? It's hard to test these certain things because there's so many variables but what's next? I know right now, there was an article out, it was on Facebook. You put in ski racing media with some stuff about the 9 essential concepts that came from the Young Skiers Guide Fundamentals of Ski Racing that I know was done out there by the West Development Initiative. So you're writing those, and I think you said earlier before we came on, you've written, I think, on the essential concept number 4 already. Oh,
for ski racing.
Yeah.
We're just going through them one at a time, and we're on 3 or 4 right now. So I'm not sure which one, the last one that came up, but just started, and they kind of go in an order. They start with a balanced athletic stance. We move into the transition, into the turn. We got some long leg, short leg, equal ankles. These 9 concepts. And the idea was that we would be able to point them out in a picture, and you could just go, oh, do they have it or they don't have it? This is important here. This is important there. That sort of thing. Yeah. Real good pictures by my old buddy Ron LeMaster. So we're glad to be still using those and, miss the ones we're not getting now, of course.
No, I know. It's horrible. The research, or there's things you're working on, or the Dan Ron Show, do they have any more videos? You must have some videos coming out this winter that people should check out. If they haven't checked out your YouTube channel, they need to. They should subscribe. It's phenomenal information.
Yeah, the Dan Ron Show actually started. We used to have our clinics here. I told you we have clinics with Ski School and the ski team, and then with Dan Ray, he's kind of my cohort on the other side on the on the ski instructor side. So we always used to have the clinical, and we call them the Dan and Ron show. COVID came around, and we thought, how do we keep people learning and stuff? So once a week we were coming out. We started with the letter A, on an A word, a B word, a C word, a D word, and so on. And then we got down to COVID went away. And if anybody watches it, that's where the toilet paper came from. It goes back, remember, COVID toilet paper was something
Yes.
we were hanging on to. It linked us up between our Zoom windows. And kind of became we still take it to live presentations now, the toilet paper. So it's kind of funny. Some young people go, what's going on here? But, it's kind of our placard out there. But yeah, the one coming out now has to do with what we're calling here our Project 2034. So we want to have this plethora of athletes on the US ski team. What kind of things can we work on now? They're not necessarily just basics, but are things that will help them in the future. So some of the things that we've been working on is we don't say, hey, do you have any good terms today? But we say, hey, do you have any good transitions today? So, we have a lot of people being able to tip them up, dragging knucks and so on. The butt's 3 inches off the ground, or, even sliding on the ground, big edge angles. That's really cool. But can you unedge that? So everybody's edge isn't really good, but can you unedge? So do you have any good transitions today? We're also thinking a lot about round turns. So in ski racing, as soon as you change radius, you're changing how the ski interacts with the snow. You're excavating a different amount of snow, which means you're causing resistance, which means you're slowing down. So being round is really important. That's especially, in the fall line there. So obviously pressure in the fall line, a big guy. And then to get all this stuff kind of together, we're dealing a lot with variability of practice. Back to that math example I gave earlier, asking the same math question over and over and trying to keep variability really, really high. Because once you can ski 3 or 4 open turns, time to change it up. If I go to a ski race, I'm still going to set the conventional turn, the conventional course. I'm probably going to have 6 to 7 turns of equal, looking pretty equal coming out of the start. I'm going to do the same at the finish. I'm going to have a long time between my transitions or between my combinations. But in training, we want to really mix it up so that they see a lot of things. They come up with solutions. They can predict what's going to happen when you come out of a combination late. How do I get over to, way over to left field? We've got, having the World Cup here was really cool. And some of the connections I have with FIS is that we're able to get a lot of dimensions from the World Cup and having the exact slope that, the men's race was held here at the slalom and the GS. And it's fun to see those dimensions and how much variability they actually have at that level. You know it for, because I've been on a gazillion World Cup courses, but then when you actually see it measured out there and know what some of our measurements are, that variability is really important. So our Project 2034 is actually, pushing that bar, not just doing the normal things we know how to do now, but trying to find things that, everybody else is not doing to become better. So if you do everything everybody else is doing, you'll become really, really, really good. But you need to become really great to succeed.
Yeah. And the connections are important. The ski world for me is the more connections I've made, the more I've learned. The few times I've been able to ski with you, and people ask a lot, to Angelo and I, what do you guys get out of the podcast? And I tell them all the time, I get to sit down with an amazing, amazing talent and folks that people would love to have time with, and I get to sit down and ask a bunch of questions that I want to ask, and get that information. But that's, I think, what's so amazing of being able to make the connections with the different countries and stuff. I know Angelo had an amazing time. Loved it. I think he wished Interski was next year, other than prepping for it.
Yeah,
but the experience, you had a great time.
We need the 2.5 years to get ready.
Yeah. But you had a blast there. You made some great connections and had some super conversations that you haven't even talked about on the podcast with different folks from different countries, and that even you and Pete Allison having some conversations about stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting.
Yeah. I think people, yeah.
Well, sorry, just
go. No, that's the one.
No, we bounce back and forth between, ski teaching world, race world, World Cup, various levels of performance and whatnot. But that idea of variability is such a neat concept when it comes to the teaching part, and I want to like bring that into the general public ski world, the idea of variability and novel experience, because doing new things with people, creating an environment where they have novel experiences, it's been associated with happiness, so this idea of mixing it up and giving someone from the general public who may or may not ski all that often a great experience on the hill, so they want to come back again and take a lesson from us. This notion of changing things. So every run feels like you did something new, even though it might only be a little bit of a tweak, probably is going to speak to their just enjoyment of the day. Sure, they're going to learn stuff. Obviously, they're going to encounter different variables on the hill. So if they come across that, they can predict, right, and say, oh, I've seen this before, so I'm going to make this kind of a turn, deal with that whatever dirt spot, slick spot, whatever it is. But the additional benefit to the variability and the novel experiences is probably just going to have a lot more fun too. And it's a pretty fine line between learning something new and enjoying yourself. They might even be the same thing at some point. So I just think it's a solid conversation that's applicable, obviously, to the race world, but and in addition to the folks who come ski with most of our listeners, which are, not World Cup hopefuls, but just folks who are out for a good time on the hill that weekend or that week or whatever. It's a solid conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And, so you got those Nordicas sitting in the background, and Angelo and I like that. Nordica is kind of in the Technical Blizzard family. They're all together there. And Mr. Michael Rogan likes to harass us that we're the little sister to the Nordicas. But, Technical Blizzard's been pretty sweet to Angelo and I here with the podcast, helping us without and getting us on the hill. And, but I have a question because, I know, Dave Wen and Coach Wen, when he meets a group, generally, if it's a level 3 prep type thing, or if it's a dev team prep here in the East for trying to become ed staff, he'll have them take their skis off first and check the edges and see if they're tuned and prepped and ready for the day. And he'll literally tell somebody, you're not ready for today. You're not ready. So how much does Coach Kipp pick up some of the skis of when you're out with the regular, PSA members, or, not just your race athletes, and go, you need to work on your skis?
A lot. We even own 150 pair of skis, because our Mighty Mite coaches and everybody has probably some of the same, that, they kind of come and go. They haven't been doing it for long. You get a lot of guys on really fat skis. So we have a whole quiver, 150 pair of skis that they can't ski on their real super wide ski. They have to ski on our ski if they can't afford or want to buy a narrower ski. That alone takes up their level of skiing. Also, once a month, they can take it in to have it tuned and waxed. And we actually even got a side beveler machine for our wax room here. So yeah, tuning is a big, big deal for sure. And being on the right ski. We even had, as a side note, John Seifert presented it at a National Academy a few years ago. And during exams one year, I think it was actually during a couple of years, I actually was measuring the width of skis, not measuring, but writing from the back, how wide people were underfoot. And we took that, and we never, it was never a published scientific peer-reviewed paper or anything. But when you did the correlation coefficient on it, if you want to pass the exam, that was a very important thing, to have a narrower ski. So not just, we didn't have a way to test the sharpness or anything, but if you were on a wide ski, your odds went down. The math showed. I mean, there was definitely exceptions and things, but yeah. And I've gone to those demo days, with all the tents and all the manufacturers, and they'll go, "Oh, Ron, come over here. You got to try this ski. It's the ski school ski, or it's the demonstration ski." And sure enough, it'd be, somewhere between a 68 and a 78, and usually it's a pretty darn good ski. So, and usually a Nordica. Sometimes it's
and then,
there's a lot of good skis out there.
and I would imagine boot fit, and that is pretty important, and getting in the right boot and having an alignment done and all that, and having some support under the foot. Angela and I we hit Nick Nick Blaylock over Nick's Boot Fitting and a lot of folks. But I mean, that's pretty important for your athletes, but definitely also for our PSA members, I would think.
Totally. I got a whole, I could turn the screen here. I got a whole boot table right to my right here. I can punch, grind, redo canting, can do the whole shop right in my office. Yeah, it is extremely important. I mean, we're a very, very equipment oriented sport. And if you don't have your stuff, working, tuned, set up, you're going to be mediocre. You can still be good, but you're not going to be really good. You can be much better if that stuff is part of your body and it works like it should work. There's a lot of technology in this stuff. So,
Well, Ron, I've got to thank you because it's awesome to have you on. I have your book also, like Alpine Skiing. You've written, you're an author, and you've written a ton of research papers and do articles that people should read. And it's awesome for our listeners to get an opportunity to hear from you. And Angelo and I absolutely would love to have you back in the future, and maybe even go into some more specifics, whether it's something on racing or just technique, or it would be a lot of fun because your knowledge base, as Angelo was saying, and coaching in the world of movement is just amazing.
Thanks, Dave. It's been a lot of fun to be here. It's good to see you too, Angelo, and hopefully we're back on snow soon. The three of us. Yeah.
Yes, that would be cool. Awesome. Yeah, whether it's in the west or east. So, I know Angelo's heading out.
Do one of these on the chairlift. What do you think? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That would be perfect. Yeah, we definitely could do that.
It all together, Next chairlift ride with Angelo and Dave.
We'll look forward to it. Ron, thanks so much for being here. And we want to thank Blizzard Technica for helping us out, and Nick's Boot Fitting, and also Rollerblade. They're great friends of the podcast and help keeping us going. And we'd like to thank Ron for being here, or starting off our new season pretty awesome. And hopefully everybody is getting geared up because we're rolling into September. And as Ron said, skiing will be here very soon, and we will all be on snow. We're getting ready. So have fun out there, folks. Get in shape if you haven't started already. And we'll see you all in snow. This has been The Fall Line with Chaos and Company.
Okay. Thanks, Angelo. Thanks, Dave.